This conference will now be recorded.
I'm not sure if that was recorded already. So we just started the recording, so we may have missed the few minutes. So from the GCC accreditation, there we go.
Hugo, one question. Hugo, one question. There's people asking if we can use the full screen mode, but you could help by minimizing the menu bars.
Yeah.
On the right side. Yes, that helps.
That helps. I can remove the ruler probably. No ruler. Okay.
Yeah, wonderful.
Yeah, sorry guys, I should be able to solve this pretty quickly. I probably just have too many windows open in my PC, and then it just gets a little bit confused. So I hope this is better visible to everybody. And the GSTC is a accreditation body, so it's set alongside the MSC for fish and the FSC for sustainable wood. And it's accredited certification body. So in this case, GSTC has accredited Ecotourism Australia and Rainforest Alliance, both for accommodation and tour operating, Travelite for tour operating, and Green Destinations for destinations. So the GCC accreditation standards, what does it mean actually? What does it say that as a body you have been accredited by the GCC? Well, it's to assuring that policies and procedures are non-discriminatory, that documented measures that there are documented measures to reduce risks to impartiality and potential conflicts of interest. For example, those arising from consultancy or existing to potential clients. So it's really the independent position of the certification body. But also it's about the competence of personnel. It's about having documented procedures and processes for all the certification aspects. It's about how site audits are conducted, and for example, how complaints and appeals are handled. So regarding the Green Destinations indicators, they are not part of the GSTC recognition, but we have developed them historically, actually, already for quite a number of years, since Green Destinations was developed from the Quality Coast and Global Sustainable Tourism Review, which gathers a number of indicators. We divide them in policy performance indicators, such as percentages of urban area, protected area, marine protected area, but also, for example, the sewage water treated or the eco-label hotels in the destinations. But also the quality indicators. So not so much on what is the policy level, but what can visitors see and appreciate within a destination, the percentage of nature or green lungs within the city, or the percentage of shoreline which is free from buildings, which are generally appreciated as beautiful by visitors. But also the bathing water quality, air quality, etc. And there's also a number of automated indicators within this indicator report. For example, the national indexes from human rights or freedom of press. But also we use GIS to calculate from destinations their percentages of protected area or of the soil, so it's the forest, is it forest or is it urban area or is it agriculture? So what do we do with this information that we gather about sustainability? It's the recognition of eventually of sustainability of destinations. So there's a top 100 competition that most of you must have been aware with, the pre-certification awards, the Quality Coast and Green Destinations Award, and the Green Destination Certification. I see a question popping up from Ioannis. I think it's good to address a few questions now. Let me see if I can get that chat box a little bit bigger so I can, yeah. How accurate are these automatic indicators calculation? There is for example, the indicators that are calculated from existing databases of indexes such as World Press Freedom or human rights indexes. They are accurate in the sense that we try to update them every year, so we have the latest data. In the accuracy of GIS certification is defined by the data from the source data that we receive. We have data from, I believe it's since 2000, every 5 years. And of course, it's remote sensing data, and we have been dealing for a while with some bugs in the data, and we believe it has been solved for the largest part. But that's also why in the indicator report, which we'll discuss in the last session, the details of it, there is an option for every destination to give their reviewed value. So if we have calculated a percentage of nature area and the destination feels, hey, that's not correct, they can submit a reviewed value based on their own data, and it will overrule, if approved by an auditor, it will overrule the data that we gathered from the database. So that's why we call the review buttons like that on the indicator report. And I see some comments on where we get presentation slide copies. Yes, of course. And I also said that I have to make Laura and Albert the presenters, the organizers. So I will do that really quickly right now as well. Okay. So this done. Okay. The next slide. So we said there's different recognition. We have the Sustainable Destination Top 100 competition running since 2014. There's a nomination methodology that was that is going along 3 main lines. Submit your nomination online with the criteria from the which cover the 30 main criteria of Green Destination Standard. Submit the indicators. The criteria and indicators are then assigned scores by an evaluation team, result in an end score, and a top 100 jury will oversee the process and decides on final scores. In further information, I think it's good to find that on the Top 100 website, sustainabletop100.org, which has also the information for the current call and this information on the 2018 and 2019 key dates. So most important is that the 15th of December is the final deadline for now, when destinations can submit their nominations for the 2019 Top 100 and the Best of Top 100 awards at ITB Berlin on the 6th of March. So on the 6th of March, based on success stories submitted by the destinations, there will be a Best of Top 100 competition. Success stories shall address a number of aspects, a number of categories, which will then, and again, a jury panel will decide on what was the best success story in each category. This is the picture from last year in ITB. So another recognition is the Awards and Certification Program. The Green Destinations and Quality Coast Awards and Slovenia Green also, they are all the same, just they have a different brand. So they use the same standard, the same indicators, and the same calculation methodology to define the award levels. For example, every award that comes, every green destination rating that comes over a total score of 5.9 is getting a bronze, and 6.9 will getting a silver, 7.9 will getting a gold, etc. These destinations that have received an award or certification, I should have mentioned, of course, that in the Green Destination Certified, which is aligned with GSTC, so that's an accredited certification. That will mean that 100% of the criteria needs to be complied with. So all these destinations that have been receiving a award or certification or a finalist at the Best of Top 100 are now presented in our Green Destinations collection. It's a website which is quite similar to the Top 100 website, and that has a destination page indicating the recognition for each criterion, for each of the acquired recognition awards. And of course, there will be a certificate for destinations that get an award and get certification. So there's a gradual approach from awards to certification. And this indicates, for example, that the Quality Coast Award is for beach or waterfront destinations. You can generally, destinations enter an award program and gradually move up from bronze to silver to gold to platinum, and are ready then for certification if they wish to proceed to certification. The other option that you see at the bottom is destination development. So destinations that have not the ambition or not yet the level to qualify for an award, they can also enter a program but under destination development membership, and they will get access to the platform and can use all the tools as destination development tools and as a framework to improve the sustainability of the destination and having the tools at hand to achieve that. So what's the difference exactly? The pre-certification awards, bronze, silver, gold, platinum. Like I said, it's Quality Coast, Quality Coast, Green Destinations, and Slovenia Green. They are defined by score on the themes. I see this is not a slide. Where certification is requiring 100% compliance. and it follows all the procedures of the GSTC accreditation. So now a destination that wants to participate in the program, they can choose from an option, do it yourself or with Green Destination Support Service. The support service is an option in doing yourself, and destinations are free to enter the platform themselves and upload all the information, submit the information. But we always motivate or recommend them to use support service by the Green Destinations Auditors Advisors and technical support, which helps them to make the required inventories, to gather required documentation, and gather evidence of compliance, assisting completing the self-assessment on the platform, building the dossiers. We really feel that there's and we have the experience also lately where we just had 2 destinations awarded at the same time, and one with a support service and the other one without. And the one that was without support service, they really had a lot more tedious process, and with the support service, it was easier to gather the right information and spend actually a lot less time for them. And the Green Destinations Auditors Advisors, they know where to find the information, and so it's usually a lot quicker than trying to do it yourself. But it's a support service, so the destinations have to eventually approve and recognize that all information is from them. And so it cannot be the case that the advisor that does the support service is replacing the destination coordinator, because otherwise it's losing the ownership. The destination losing ownership over its assessment, over its and the knowledge and the training actually in how to become more sustainable. So as a professional, you can get involved, like I said, as an auditor or as an advisor, but also as representatives. We have representatives over a number of countries around the world right now, which as a representative operate the program on behalf of Green Destinations, which means they are contracting the destinations, they're making sure account management is done, making sure an auditor is found, etc. The other options is as preferred partner. So preferred partners, they liaise with destinations and provide support services to them, but the contracting party remains the Green Destinations and the destination. And this allows the preferred partner also to do auditing, for example. And it's usually the case in partners that have multiple people able to assign a role. So a certifier, an auditor, a coach, an advisor, and they're usually able to do a representative role. But if there's one person, it's hard to combine a representative role with support service, etc., because then the same person is going to have too much roles at the same person level, and that's not allowed within the principles of independent certification. I see a question from Peter. Is there a list on the web where it's possible to see if there are partners representatives in a country? We have our countries listed on our partners listed on our website under partners, but I do believe we can make them available per country, so it's becoming more evident on which country which representative can be contacted. Definitely something we can improve, and thanks for that suggestion, Peter. All right, we can move to part B now, but unless there's any other question on this brief introduction to the Green Destination Certification Awards, etc. I don't see a question coming up so far, so and for any questions we can also. AEN is a partner. Yes, it's a partner, but it's not a representative in a particular territory or region, if I'm not mistaken.
I can comment that AEN is a partner in the Top 100 competition and the Best of Top 100 Awards at ITB. And there's a standing invitation to AEN national representatives to, or national board members to become representatives for us. And Masaru has been accepting that, and more are likely to follow. Thank you.
All right. I hope the screen is large enough so we can proceed with the part B, which is on auditing for Green Destinations Awards and Certification. Before we can try and solve the full screen issue. So we'll discuss some auditor requirements, some auditing principles, skills, and techniques, some procedures, and some guidelines for auditing here. So here's the list of auditor eligibility requirements. It's following the GCC accredited certification rules, and it holds that to start with, auditors should have an undergraduate degree in environmental sustainability management and/or tourism disciplines, or a minimum of 5 years experience in an environmental subject or sustainable tourism. That's for one. That's for two, environmental, social, or sustainability auditing qualifications, or at least 5 years experience in developing, managing sustainable tourism certification program. Again, this is for GCC accredited certification requirements. With the award program, we can help auditors to gain this experience because these requirements are not that strict for award program. Furthermore, 5 years experience in sustainable tourism or an awareness of sustainable tourism, such as a training, followed a training by GSTC or another certification scheme. GSTC is providing online and on-site STTP trainings, like basic sustainable tourism trainings. And that's a good source of gaining your required experience or your required sustainable tourism awareness and education. Ideally, also experience in carrying out at least one sustainability audit, for example, ISO 14001, EMAS, or another GCC recognized standard. For example, if you're a travel life auditor, that's definitely, or an EarthCheck auditor, that's definitely a pro in becoming in your requirements for becoming a Green Destinations auditor. Profound in English, reading, writing, and speaking, because although audits can be done in the local languages, a few local languages have translated the standard in I think now about 10 languages, including Mandarin, Japanese, if I'm not mistaken, but also Greek, Spanish, French, German, Portuguese. So, but the reporting should always be in English. So the report that you write as an auditor should be in English, because the certification committee should be able to assess the auditor's recommendation and the auditor's remarks. And as final requirement is to sign an auditor framework contract with confidentiality, code of conduct, integrity, etc. covered. This contract will also send it to you at the end of this meeting or after this meeting, because it will be governing your participation and your access to our online platform and the data of destinations that has been submitted to the online platform. So for approved green destinations auditor, there's 4 main requirements. Sustainable tourism training, such as the STTP, etc. Green destinations auditor training, such as we're doing right now. Pass the green destinations auditor exam, and having done some practical training. So practical training means shadowing one experienced auditor as this first, and then second, being shadowed by one other experienced auditor. So once you've ticked all those 1, 2, 3, 4, actually 5 boxes, then you're a GSTC accredited, Green Destinations approved auditor, ready to do GSTC accredited certification audits. I see a question from Ioannis. Is there any conflict if someone is auditor with another certification system? For example, EarthCheck. No, there's no conflict. We have a clause in the agreement that is about promoting and competing schemes, but that's not about auditing for competing schemes. So I think it's the contrary. It's good when an auditor is already experienced with another certification scheme, because it makes them much more aware and valuable as auditor. And it's good also to hear feedback. Any questions on requirements for approved auditors? Can you, Ioannis, can you please clarify if an approved green destination auditor could be an auditor also for other GSTC accredited schemes? That's probably, yeah, go ahead, Ioannis.
So if someone follow all these steps and become an approved green destination auditor, so I'm following what you are saying inside the brackets, GSTC accredited certification in order to be handled by this auditor. Can this auditor go to another scheme and says, okay, guys, I am approved green destination auditor, so now you can use me also as an auditor if you are accredited by GSTC. Is that true?
What do you mean with accredited by GSTC? Because
I mean, right now it is EarthCheck together with Green Destinations, right, for destinations. So can someone use your training in order to have, let's say, the qualification as an individual and go outside and use it in other schemes? That's the question.
I think that depends on the other scheme, what they accept. I would be hesitant from my part as a Green Destinations to accept without any training an earth check auditor, because although conceptually we cover the same aspects because we're both recognized by the GSTCR standards, but we do have some different approaches in our criteria or have some different formulations. I also see Marco here saying that EarthCheck has his own training program that has to be followed. So indeed, Marco, go ahead.
Yeah, that's correct. The short answer is no.
Okay.
If you want to be an auditor for EarthCheck, you have to follow their own training program.
Yeah, and I would say that would be the same for green destinations, the other way around. For auditors that would like to audit for green destinations, that they would have to pass the green destinations auditor exam to make sure that they are on the same page and have the same understanding as all the other auditors, and that there's consistency in the auditors. Thank you both, and Marco, for stepping in. I see from Eva the question: for approved green destinations auditor, does one then need 5 years experience of working in sustainable tourism, or education is enough? Yeah, the education is replacing the 5 years experience. So it's either or, it's not both. So if you have, if I'm not mistaken, undergraduate degree in environmental sustainability management or tourism discipline, or a minimum of 5 years experience, then you qualify. I also see a question by Anna. Anna asks, what would be the time span to become a fully approved green destinations auditor, including the practical training? Yeah, it very much depends on the availability of audits to be shadowed or to shadow. For example, if we now start with this training and you finish the exam in January, and then it depends on the 2 audits that you have to do, one shadow and one being shadowed, to if that becomes available, because it's not that we have every week an audit available. So we'll try to connect you with an audit that's nearby as soon as possible to make sure that you get your level and your requirements ticked as soon as possible. Peter, good question. Does practical training mean online and or on-site audit? The practical training we haven't specified it, whether it's online or on-site, but I would say at least one on-site audit needs to be included in the practical training. So one on-site audit needs to be shadowed, or somebody needs to shadow one on-site audit of you. Any other questions? Okay, so I think we can move on. We've been, yeah, let's do one more section and then have a break after that. Yep, here I am. So the auditing principles, skills, and techniques that you have to acquire or have to have as an auditor will be discussed right now. First of all, what is an audit? So an audit is a systematic and comprehensive process of investigation, through checking documents, conducting interviews, observation, and other means that the compliance requirements defined for each criteria are met, as quoted by the GSTC. So our audits are third party. What means third party auditing? First party audit means I myself declare that I conform with this and that standard. So that's first party. No check from anybody. It's just one party, like an hotel or destination, that declares itself as having a certain standard or level of sustainability. Second party is then there's two parties involved, such as a trade association and a member, or a hotel and an auditor is also two parties. So if a hotel contracts directly an auditor to do an audit against a certain standard, that's second party. A third party then, that's what green destination certification is that there are three independent and unrelated parties involved. So one is the product and service to be certified, two is the auditor, and three is the party that verifies the auditor's reports, so the certification body. So just to be clear on what third-party auditing is, and also goes into the next principle, or being independent. So auditors are required not to have a history of business relations with the destination as a principle. Now, if there is a business relation with a destination which may be present in history but not affecting the current business relationship, the auditors are required to report them to green destinations. So we can keep them in our record of risks, and like that we can keep track of the risks. So we can accept an auditor to have a history of business relation with the destination if we have assessed and reviewed that it's not according to our judgment affecting the current audit. But as long as these procedures are recorded in a risk register, that's an accepted procedure according to the GSTC principles. So also principles that of integrity. So auditors should sign a code of conduct, anti-bribery policy, etc. You will also see that after the session today, where you will be sent the agreement, making sure that all the auditors that audit for green destinations are doing that in an honest and fair way. Furthermore, it's supposed to be evidence-based. For GSTC accredited certification, we require fully evidence-based audits. For green destinations or quality coast awards, we apply a sort of gradually increasing level of evidence required from bronze towards platinum. So for bronze destinations, the auditors don't have to be that strict with requiring letter and documented evidence for each criterion. The compliance can also be illustrated by the destination with examples, for example, or with statements that make it very assumable that the compliance is there. That is a way to make the burden of the entry level for destination to participate in a program lower, because a fully evidence-based audit is requiring a lot of input, a lot of investment of a destination, which is sometimes for more than half the time actually based on just gathering information that's there somewhere within the organization. Of course, destinations are complex organizations dealing with different departments that have information, departments of environment, sociology, social aspects, cultural departments. going through all these departments by the destination coordinator is actually part of the training of becoming a more sustainable destination, because a lot of feedback that we get is that those destinations or that get awarded, that coordinators, they become really aware now on what's actually all there within their municipality in terms of departments and how they're interrelated. So they actually learn from the process. But for the bronze and silver level awards, we do make notes, and we do require the auditors to take note if evidence is missing. But at especially at the certification committee level, can decide, well, we have seen sufficient evidence, we have seen sufficient illustration that this criterion is met, and we give a compliance for now. With the remark, we come back to remarks later that a next audit, so in 2 years, then evidence should be updated or should be uploaded. So that's the reason why we say also it should not be unnecessarily tedious. Consider the difference between awards versus certified audits. I'm seeing a comment from Carl. Thinks it could be an advantage if an auditor knows the destination already. Yeah, I agree with that, fully agree. And that's why there's this opportunity to be an independent auditor, even if there's been a business relation, but the business relation should be clear and open. So then the auditing skills and attitudes. So of the auditor, so it's not the auditor during the process should be prepared. So should be informed about the destination, and hence we can directly connect back to Carl's comment. The more the auditor knows already about the destination, the better he informs he or she, the better informed he or she is, and the more detailed the audit can be, and probably also the most accurate the audit can be. So, but the auditor should also be consistent. So adhere to the process and steps explained in this document. This document should be linked to the auditor instructions document. In the PowerPoint that I will send from this training, we will give you the links to the auditor instructions document. So you get a document, and all auditors are expected to go through the steps that we discuss in a second in the same way to keep the process consistent. Auditors should also be in control. So meaning that have an input in the audit program development. So the audit program development is the moment when you do an on-site audit and your destination is proposing certain sites to visit or certain people to speak. You're required to really don't take all the suggestions from the destination, but also make up your own suggestions and decide for yourself who you want to speak and what sites you want to visit. And then there's effective. Yeah, let me discuss the questions in a minute. There's also effective communication. So verbally, in interviews and in writing, in audit reports, auditors should be good in communicating. In interviews, of course, the communication is very much about how to ask the questions politely, but at the same time, really go into the detail and not being shy of being critical. Whereas in writing, the communication should be also the same, so polite, but critical, but also should be professional. So should be the audit report should be well written in a way that they are communicated to the destinations as the professional report. I see a question from Lismar from Brazil. Are green destination auditors ready to audit quality coast destinations too? Yes. Like I said, the quality coast and green destinations awards are using exactly the same criteria. In some indicators, if you start the indicator report, you start with the first question indicating whether you have bathing sites in your destination or you have a coastal area in your destination. And selecting those indicators will trigger a few more indicators on those specific aspects. So that's the only difference between quality coast and green destinations awards. But yeah, it's all green destinations auditors are ready to audit for quality coast. Then the next step of auditing skills and attitudes is about evaluating compliance. So what do you need to be or need to do as an auditor when evaluating compliance of specific criteria? So it's being critical, like I said. Look, in principle, always for evidence. So show me to support claims made by the auditee. So when an auditor is saying that they're having a meeting with all stakeholders every month or every 3 months, you would typically want to see proof of those meetings, whether they are photos or meeting reports or agenda minutes, etc. Also, an auditor should be impartial, should not be open to forms of influence which might raise doubts about the objectivity of the decisions taken. Auditor should be consistent in making judgments, so not only consistent in the process, but also in judging compliance always for each destination, for each indicator in the same way. Integrity should be demonstrated again in every aspect of the process. And furthermore, the auditor should display credibility in relation to tourism sustainability. So the auditor should spread confidence that certification is a meaningful way of identifying and stimulating good sustainability practice in the tourism sector. So a few techniques that auditors are using during the desk audit and during the on-site audit. For example, a document review. In case of large documents, destinations are instructed to reference to relevant paragraphs in those documents. When doing a desk audit, you're going to meet probably a lot of, and depending on the amount of documentation uploaded to the platform, you're going to see a lot of large documents. For example, development strategies, waste management plans, public procurement policies, heritage, nature protection plans, regulations, etc. The destinations are instructed to reference to the relevant paragraphs because they are, for example, if you're looking for communication about sustainability, the destination indicates that it's somewhere in their policy, in their sustainable tourism development policy, for example. And and it is really up to the destination to give reference to page numbers or paragraphs on where that information can be found. It's not good practice and in principle not accepted that destinations does upload the policy and say, okay, here you go, there's 100 pages and just find where it is. However, if you sometimes it works faster if you just use a simple search functionality and look up sustainable, responsible environment, etc. in these plans, not only to find specific references, but also to check whether the submitted tourism policy is actually targeting or addressing these sustainability issues and aspects. So use the functionalities in those document, search functionalities in those documents to find references and to quickly be able to judge on compliance levels. I'm seeing here a few comments. I see a comment from Peter writes, maybe something to be parked because it's not about this auditing. I do see a comment from Lisa, for incorrect references during a desk audit, does an auditor flag it as non-conformity or rather look for the correct reference? There's some, it really should be subject to your own judgment, I would say. If it's really a large document and you cannot find it within, like, say, 1 minute, maybe 2 minutes, and there's really no appropriate reference given, then I would say, especially in the face of desk auditing, hey, I cannot find it in your desk, because if you have a situation where you're doing first a desk audit and then an on-site audit, discuss that in a second, then you'll have the opportunity during your on-site audit, so when you're visiting the place, to revisit certain parts. So you place this as remark in your criterion, and you mark this criterion as to be discussed when being on-site. Maybe the destination has already addressed it before you go inside, because they can see your remark and maybe they already say, okay, I've been, and this is, you can find this on page 10. Then you can really quickly address it in your on-site audit, saying, yes, it's already there, it's page 10, and then you can quickly tick that box. So for interviews then.
There is a question from Peter Kopper from Bhutan.
Yeah.
Shall I take that one?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Peter asks, countries as destinations are not mentioned in the literature, for instance, Green Destinations Guide for Destinations. Why is that? Can countries as a whole achieve certification? In principle, yes, they can, but we do not encourage that, because countries are a very complex level of policies and management, in which you have sometimes autonomous regions and provinces or districts or cities that have different policies. So we do not encourage it for these complex countries, but it's obviously possible for smaller countries with a less complex administrative system. For example, Monaco is a country that you can really, of course, everybody would laugh, but the smaller countries will be no problem, of course, because they can really be considered a one level or one tier destination. But for Bhutan, we've discussed that, and we say, look, just start doing the assessment, and then we'll see how complex the implementation of policies and regulations is in the country, whether it's better to go for certification on a country level or at a provincial level. Thank you.
Great. Okay, let's move on. So the interviews. There's two different types of respondents, internal stakeholders, external stakeholders. Internal stakeholders are part of the destination management organization or the municipality or the protected area management body. Then external stakeholders are, for example, NGOs, NGOs in nature, in social, or in culture, etc., or representatives from the business communities, so trade associations, etc. So the way you best ask questions in an interview is in a conversational manner. It's not directly the best way to do it is not directly question Q&A like that. Try to make it into a conversation that usually gives a better situation to find the real opinions of people. Also, before your interviews, explain what you're doing, that you're asking actually for help to make judgments on sustainability, and that you're also there again to help the destination, to make the destination more sustainable. Do not cross-question. So that's the keep it into a conversational situation. Avoid questions that sound routinely. Open questions are more quite effective. So rather than asking, do you feel you're involved as destination, as a business person in the development of the tourism policy, for example, you could ask, how was your involvement in the tourism development policy or in developing the tourism policy? Give space also to respondents to express concerns. And some respondents will definitely go in a lot of detail. So it's really the trick here to keep the interview to the topics, at the same time allowing space to for issues to be discussed that may not be directly in your list of questions, but pop up because they maybe have not been addressed in the desk audit or something. And of course, time management. So in general, you have 1 day for an award audit, a full day, and you have to speak a few internal stakeholders, probably a few external stakeholders, and visit a few sites within that day. So it's also key to don't let the interview get extended. Laura from Toronto, I see you asking if it's okay to have multiple levels of awards and certification. Say Canada might get bronze, Ontario might get silver, Niagara might get gold, Niagara Parkway. Yeah, of course. There are definitely in that way, so incremental from large level to local level, from national level to local level. You can get increased level of sustainability recognition. So the way you present it there, Canada bronze, Ontario silver, Niagara gold, etc. That's the correct way that it can be. Cannot be in principle, logically, cannot be the other way around, because the scope is very important. the scope of certification or an award. So whether if a destination gets awarded, it has defined the scope to include all the territories of that certain destinations or certain region, then that should apply in every sub-region of that region or every locality. Question from Lisa also, does green destinations allow for group interviews or rather individual ones? Where I'm based, there are cultural dynamics that make people nervous around someone they see as an outsider or senior to them. Sometimes a group interview allows for the more conversational approach. Is it acceptable? Yes, very acceptable. I can imagine it might be harder to record such interviews and to make sure that everything is noted. But if you use a recording on your phone or something, that's definitely acceptable. And in the end, all the means that make your interview better and more geared towards finding evidence, finding the truth, the better, yeah. Do all the interviews have to be recorded? We're gonna touch that in a second, but it's up to you, Peter. We don't require it to be recorded, but it can be, especially in the beginning, can be handy to record it to make sure that you don't miss anything. After a few audits, you may leave the recording and you feel confident enough to just do it by taking notes. Because, of course, recording and then listening back to your recordings is going to take a lot of time. Okay, then site inspections. What are aspects that you would use site inspections for? For example, equipment, instruments, and installations, such as electric cars from the municipality. If they, in their policy or the sustainability policy, or maybe they call it climate plan, they say that they want to electrify the municipality cars. It's good to check if the parking of the municipality, if you're visiting them, if there's electric cars and if there's car chargers or bicycle chargers there. Typically also waste management facilities, if they say that they are separating their waste, and make sure that you see actually within the offices or outside bins that actually are supporting or facilitating this recycling and separating of waste. LED street lighting is also such an example. There's a lot of things that you could quickly check, but it's not an inspection as you would maybe do in a hotel where you would really sample, where your goal is to sample all the aspects, all the lights or the water saving taps, etc. It's more as you're going there, you want to do some checks. The time is just, especially because in the destination is very big, you don't have sufficient time to go to every locality to see if their LED street lighting is there. But you can keep your eyes open to while you're there and while you're going around to be vigilant for it. Posters, notes, science communications, for example, for recycling, codes of conduct, whether they're displayed on typical tourist attractions or sensitive areas. Alarms and warning signs, for example, for tsunami evacuation signs, part of the social part of sustainability. It's about health and safety. Okay, we're coming to a next section. It's about the auditing procedures. I suggest that we have a small break to get a cup of tea. something like that. Let's say, what time is it now? 19. And so I suggest that we continue at, yeah, so I have 10-minute break and continue in 10 minutes. But before we go, we can maybe discuss Giovanni's question. What about other certification that we could find in place? For example, ISO 5001, ISO 37101 on sustainable communities. Is it enough to ask for the certificate, or we go in more depth? If these ISO certificates are subject to auditing, independent auditing, I would say the certificate is enough and you don't have to go and double check for this. Is that the case, Johannes? Because I'm curious to hear. Somebody can.
I'm more focusing not really if it is certified. Of course, it's going to be a third-party certification on that. I'm more focusing the connection between our indicators and some parts that these certifications can, let's say, cover. So let's say for system management system for the communities about sustainability that we can use if it is, let's say, certified by 37101 or something like that. I mean, how the green destination deals this, let's say, overlapping, let's say, or something else. I don't know.
Yeah, we haven't made a specific framework on what other certifications can cover aspects of our standard, so that they don't have to be checked anymore by the auditor. That would be good to do. I haven't so far come across any of such ISO certificates that destinations came up with, saying, hey, this is what we have. Is that not sufficient? But if you have an example and we can make an framework for it, that would make life easier for everybody, I think, that have such a certificate. So I would say let's discuss it and see what we can do with that one-on-one. Okay, so short break. Be back at 30 to continue. Thank you. So I hope everybody is ready. Back. So let's continue with the auditing procedures. I believe I've
Hugo, maybe questions first.
Sure. Yeah. Laura from Toronto asks, a region with UNESCO World Heritage designation likely ticks a few boxes, that's for sure, and that's actually one of the indicator criteria, which makes an indicator scoring on culture really good. So it's connected to indicators, but at the same time, it's also good if a destination submits their UNESCO Heritage Management Plan or the other documentation that's been related to the UNESCO destination being submitted. And that's also a good source for an auditor to check from, okay, if it's done and approved by UNESCO, then it's quite easy to tick that box. On the other hand, UNESCO also has a list of World Heritage Sites in danger. And that could also be a good source for an auditor to check, because it's probably not what the destination will report in the first place if their World Heritage is on the endangered list by UNESCO. So there's a few things to take into consideration there. Angelique is then saying that she can imagine that in order to make a good impression, municipality is not showing the audited places that would not comply. We're going to the preparation in a minute, so we're touching upon that issue. How you can make sure that you have a diverse input on which places you see. Then from Leismar, from Brazil, related to Angelique's question, when should the auditor take randomly sample impressions from different communities in the destination to avoid that? Okay, again, we're going to touch that in the next couple of slides from now. Okay, so you're running ahead very well. Let's discuss the general procedure. So, general procedure for destinations to start to be receiving their audit is that they start with an online report on the Green Destination Standard. It's a self-assessment. It's still called self-assessment, but we're going to change that into a self-reporting. The yes/no that destinations have to tick. When we'll discuss the platform in detail, you can see that is going to indicate whether they finished completing that criteria. It's not going to indicate whether they think they comply or not, because our experience over the past 2 years working with this online platform is that everybody says yes for every criterion. Hardly anybody that has ticked a no. So the real function of the yes/no for self-assessment is not there anymore. We are going to use it to indicate, so let the destination indicate whether they finished, so whether it's ready for being assessed. Their answer and their uploads are ready for being assessed for audit. So it's more of keeping track of progress in the reporting phase. Second step is then that a technical check is being performed by the Green Destination Secretariat to make sure that the report is complete for auditing. Complete means that all the relevant aspects have been discussed and there are sufficient uploads, depending again on the type of application. So if it's an application for certified, then the technical check will make sure that all the evidence required is uploaded. If the application is for Green Destinations or Quality Coast Awards, then there's a less stringent policy for requiring document uploads. So then when the technical check is okay, the auditor will perform an audit. So Green Destinations will send out, for certifieds especially, will send out an open email to all approved auditors saying that are within a reasonable reach of the destination, saying we have an audit who is interested to register for it, to do the audit. Based on that, we will then select an auditor and propose it to the destination to check whether the destination has any issues with the auditor, any problems. Because the destination should have the, if there are multiple auditors available, should have the right, if they have a good story or a good reason to doubt the independence of an auditor or the integrity according to their own experiences, they have the right to appeal to a certain auditor being appointed to a destination. So when that is all settled and the auditor is accepted, the auditor performs an audit. And for the Green Destinations and Quality Coast Awards, every 4 years there should be an on-site audit, and every 2 years a desk audit. For certification, every 2 years there should be an on-site audit. Subsequently, after the audit, we're going into the auditing steps in detail in a second, but after the audit is submitted to the certification committee as recommendation for review. The certification committee is going to assess the audit and has the opportunity to ask some questions to the auditor on certain decisions made for compliance levels that has been decided. And then finally, the certification committee makes the final evaluation, calculates the award or certification level, and notifies the destination of the result and releases the audit report for the destination. I see a question from Ioannis. Can you please repeat how Green Destinations will select the proper auditor, given that the qualifications are covered and no relation with the destination? Can we clarify this? So given that the qualifications are covered and there's no relation with the destination, then the decision, if there's multiple auditors interested in the destination, we take into consideration whether an auditor has audited the destination before, because we try not to have the same destination audited twice in a row by the same destination, so taking turns. That's another criterion. Of course, the location, so whether it's close by and releasing the least CO2 into an environment of getting the auditor to the location to be audited. That's another criterion on we select. And of course, availability. The term, if the availability is feasible of the auditor for the audit. So you need offer from us for the traveling, like, for example, TravelLife does. I'm not sure. Maybe can you discuss by microphone, Ioannis? I'm not sure what you mean by the traveling cost.
Yes. Let's say that there is an auditor based in Athens and an auditor based in Paris, and the destination is in Austria or in Rome, let's say, somewhere around. Mm-hmm. So for the case of other schemes like TravelLife, they're asked from the auditor to make an offer for the traveling cost in order to calculate which of the available auditors are mostly, let's say, less expensive for the system. Let's say that. So,
okay. Well,
yeah, this is the idea.
Yeah, I understand it, and I think it's not so much the system, because we don't include the audit travel costs. So we add the travel costs to the fee that we charge to the destination. So of course we want to keep it as low as possible, not only for the costs but also for the CO2 impact. So I'm not sure how TravelLife does that for hotels, that they asked an offer for, maybe in TravelLife for hotels, the travel of the auditor is included into the fees with their hotels. If that's the case, that's not the case in.
Yeah, actually, I think this is the TravelLife model for hotels, at least. The traveling cost is included in the membership, so it is not, in the audit cost. So they try, I suppose, I'm auditor, but not representing TravelLife. I suppose they're trying to minimize the cost of the traveling because it's inside the auditing cost that the hotel pays. So the same case in destination. They would like to have the lowest, let's say, traveling cost from auditor, but Green Destinations proposed the final selection of the auditor. So you should select the proper case.
Yeah, we currently don't have the model of TravelLife, so we're selecting the auditor based on best location and the other criteria that we formulated.
I can add maybe that we try as much as possible to operate the program, the certification program, through country representatives. So then we leave this consideration to the green destination representatives in that country, and we encourage them to select auditors that then be trained to do audits in their country, and that makes it then a lot easier to select an auditor and a lot better for the climate too.
All right. So more detailed for a desk audit, what are the steps in the process? So again, the self-assessment / reporting now by the destination is the first step. We'll see in a minute how it works on the platform. Then technical check by the Green Destination Secretariat again, desk audit by the auditor. Auditor submits remarks to Green Destinations. Final evaluation by the certification committee. Award level communicated, audit report provided, and an official award ceremony. This is specifically for the desk audit, and it's also listed in the auditor instruction document where I talked about. So to take each step in a little bit more detail. Here is what's happening on the online platform. So you start with reading the criterion description and if necessary, the guidance. So A and B. In the guidance is a tab on the online system where it explains more about the criterion. And section D, then you check if the aspects are covered as instructed in section C. And as third step, check if in section F, items are uploaded as instructed, again, as in section E. So there's specific instruction for the destination on what should be explained and what should be or maybe uploaded. Then it's step 4, assess whether the text in D and the items uploaded in F are fully, partially, or not covering the criterion. And then you mark your decision in the traffic lights, so that we call them. So green, orange, or red buttons in section G. So it's on the left-hand side of that screenshot. So that's how the auditing on the platform works. First, check what the criterion is, then what the destinations have submitted. Open that and make your decision, and we'll go into detail on how to make that compliance decision in the last section of this session today. This is just showing how it works on the platform. So the red button, for example, you can use that, for example, if an explanation is missing or insufficient, if essential supporting evidence is missing or clearly insufficient. And orange button for partially compliant misses, for example, is you can select, for example, if explanation is provided but essential evidence is missing to make it likely that the destination is compliant. Also, if supporting evidence provides maybe some proof of compliance, but not fully, only partial, or it's not up to date, or it's in draft version. So but we also say to destinations that whatever they have in draft, please do submit it, because they can gain this orange point. So orange means 1 point, red means 0 points, and green means 2 points. So to show that they're on the way, that they're making progress, even if they don't have a final document, for example. Orange can also be selected if substantial lack of enforcement or major issues. But that in general, the policies or the management plans are in place. So that is just the enforcement or implementation is missing there. So the green button is then selected if compliance, for example, explanation, essential supporting evidence is uploaded as instructed, or if compliance follows from national or European legislation. This is a specific part, the country baseline assessment. We have done research now in a few countries on what criteria are already covered by national or EU legislations. So if that destination that you're auditing is in such a country, we'll provide a list of affected criteria, so positively affected in this case, because you don't have to be very strict in auditing that. You can, because they've been already assessed on a national level, this is in principle already covered in each destination within this country. But you would, especially in an on-site audit, check with whether local enforcement and implementation is adequate and in place. Okay, I'm seeing two a little bit off-topic questions. Let's park them for a moment and move to these tabs first. Then, in the desk audit, when auditing, there's also optional criteria. You will find these optional criteria with a dash in the first column. You see that's indicated right here. This optional criteria are not mandatory, and destination can earn extra points only if they score fully compliant. So the instructions for auditors is to only audit them, so only choose green, orange, or red button. Well, to only choose an green button if it's fully compliant, and not to give orange or red buttons. We'll check that, of course, when we review the auditor's submissions, the audit reports, the auditor's reports. But this is the case because these extra points can only be made technically counting towards their award level, to the total scoring, if they are green. So they are left out of the equation if there's orange or red, and that's why they should not be selected if they're not compliant. Little bit technical, but there's I can explain in more detail if needed. So the remarks then for each orange and red, so partially or fully, partially or non-compliant criteria, the auditor shall provide a short explanation why it's not fully compliant, for one, and secondly, a recommendation what can be done to improve compliance. Especially the first part is something important. It's this structure that makes it easy for a destination to go through the audit report and understand it, understand why they didn't comply, and what they can do to improve compliance. A few notes in these auditor remarks. In pre-final stages, the remarks can be short, but eventually they should be well written because they form the core of the official audit report with recommendation to the member. Write the report in the third person, so don't say I have been reviewing this, or I think, or you should do this, but more in the third person. Do not make assertions that the destination has to do or improve something in order to achieve compliance. So recommendations should clearly be suggestions and examples rather than a condition for compliance. This is in conformity with the certification standards and principles that you bring yourself in a position if you give not a recommendation, but if you suggest that if they do that, they will receive compliance the next time or after they solve the issue. But things can change in between time, over time, and other things can affect, or other things can pop up that affect compliance, and then you have a conflict there. So that's why we always say keep your recommendations in terms of suggestions and examples, or you could think of something like along those lines. Draw recommendations from the guidance tab. It's interesting to see that a lot of destinations don't fully read the guidance, so you can get your inspiration for formulation of recommendation from the guidance tab. The guidance tab gives explanations on how to implement the criteria, and so you can draw your recommendations from there. The system is set to save your remarks, but once clicking away, that the best practice is to hit the update button to save your remarks. So there's an update button right here in the bottom. It's quite recently that we saved that we changed the system in such a way that whenever you click away from the field where you make your remarks, your changes are saved. Previously, you really had to click the update button, but that resulted in a few hours of lost work when auditors did not do that in time. So it's still good practice to do it, just to be sure, but so far we have been very successful in making sure that all remarks are saved. The deadline for completion then can be suggested, for example, 3, 9, and 18 months, or it can be left empty. It can be used to indicate like how your sort of suggestion or judgment on how fast improvement can be made, if it's a quick win or if it's something that needs to take longer time. And it's not required, but it gives like an extra indication to the destination. I see a question from Peter around this issue. Assuming that internal notes are not visible to the destination. No, internal notes are for the assessment team. So the coach from Green Destinations, and the auditor. Okay, so that was the process for desk audits. Now the process for on-site audits, it largely follows the first part of the desk audit, because also an on-site audit, so every 4 years, you start preparing the on-site audit with the desk audit. So the first couple of points are pretty much the same. But after point 3, after the audit, on-site audit preparation. So the auditor should contact 2 or 3 stakeholders by phone, can also actually be by Skype, or even by email if phone is not possible, to, based on the desk audit, find some feedback on specific issues. For example, if you have assessed the destination's nature policy and you find in the nature policy that they are protecting nature for with visitor management, for example, and they have done it successfully according to the report of the destination, that you ask a nature protection organization if they can confirm that, or an NGO or a forest manager if they feel the same. So we'll come to the preparation part where how you do that in a second. But that's how you prepare your on-site visit. So during your on-site visit, you have the interviews and site inspections. Then the final evaluation by the certification committee. Then again, award level communicated, audit report provided, and official award ceremony. So this is again an overview, and we'll go into the details of the on-site auditing right now. So the desk audit is conducted as the desk audit. The desk audit results, the remarks, are to be sent to the destination prior to the on-site visit, so they can prepare for the questions that you have to the internal stakeholders. However, at this stage, the auditor feels, based on the desk audit outcome, that the member or the destination is not complying with the standard to qualify for at least bronze. In coordination with our secretariat, we can postpone or cancel the continuation of the audit process, because of course it's a waste of resources if an auditor goes to a destination and concludes that it's not ready for bronze. So that's important to realize. Then about the external stakeholder consultation. Prior to on-site visit, aim to consult by phone, Skype, or email a few external stakeholders with the goal to verify destination reporting regarding the implementation and enforcement of policies, community and stakeholder involvement also, asking those external parties on how they feel actually involved in whether it is a tourism development policy or a cultural heritage plan. A lot of planning in a destination, territorial planning as well, is supposed to be subject to public consultation and involvement. So you can check with these external stakeholders whether they feel the same way. For example, as types of stakeholders, representatives of the private sector, critical environment or cultural NGOs can be respondents, and topics shall be both general and specific to the assessment. So like I said, how do you feel the destination is taking care of its nature? Yeah, a very open question. And the other one, or very specific, do you feel entrepreneurs are involved in destination planning, or to what extent, if you want to keep them open, the question. Or do you feel nature protection regulations are adequately enforced? Then the part in preparation, in preparing the on-site audit, that is about site visit planning. Contact the destination to plan the on-site audit before you go there, of course, including what stakeholders are supposed to be interviewed. Identify yourself a list of respondents based on your desk audit, stakeholder consultation, and any on research on key sustainability issues. Ask suggestions from the destination coordinator and collaboratively agree on a list of interviewees for your on-site visit. It's clear one of the issues to keep in control, make sure that you are in control and you don't only accept all the, blindly accept all the respondents that are suggested by the destination. But of course, if it's if you have identified non-conformities or doubts, for example, for wastewater facilities, you definitely want to talk with the guy in the destination that's responsible for wastewater. So then it's quite obviously. Sites to be visited on a site visit, also to be discussed in coordination with the destination coordinator. Choose areas where the tourism services are delivered and tourism-related impacts may take place. So here we come back to Angelique's question, how you make sure that the destination is not showing only the good parts of the destination. You get that from checking with your external stakeholders, so critical NGOs and representatives of maybe sustainable businesses that are critical, or general representatives of the hotel or tourism industry. To ask whether, what are interesting sites and what are positive sites and what are sites that maybe what they think that the destination is not doing sufficient to keep them beautiful or low impact, etc. So that's one thing, but you can also do some own research on, check on TripAdvisor where there have been negative comments, on Facebook, on the maybe not whether it's negative comments, but on what are typical areas to visit. And so suggest then to, when organizing your visit, to visit those areas that you heard from your stakeholders, from your own observations. Okay, what is interesting here, and what are people drawn to? Because those are the most likely places that impacts take place, or those are the most interesting, most relevant places to focus on during your site inspection. Make sure that your audit plan is developed well in advance of your visit and is feasible to be executed within a full day. And avoid that critical sites stakeholders are planned at the end of the day, with the risk that they will miss due to delays. So best if you have a few very important stakeholders, sites to visit, to try to plan that in the beginning of your audit. I see a question here from Peter Copper, who sits on the certification committee. Certification committee is made up of Albert and me, and representatives are invited to join the committee based on a certain level of involvement of expertise. So for audits that are happening in certain countries, that there's also a local representative available to have the award assessment executed. Masaru is then saying, with my experience with WTTC, Net Geo on-site audit for the awards takes at least 2 days of on-site audit, means desk audit have to be very intensive and extensive. What if you cannot conclude within a full day? And indeed, the desk audit has to be doing the largest part of the work, covering the largest part of the audit. And that's also why we have this technical check, to make sure that the auditor is not going to start his work or her work before sufficient information and evidence has been uploaded. So for awards, we have a 1-day maximum that an auditor should spend. So the auditor is really there on site to make sure that any uncertainties or unclarities are solved, to talk to a few people, to make sure that to talk to the people that have submitted the reporting, to look them in the eyes, to gain a personal relationship and find some kind of judgment on what they've been reporting. It's not principally about checking all the evidence and doing sampling, etc., on site, because that's been done already in preparation. So yeah, it's intensive, and it's the largest part that's part of the desk audit. On the other hand, for certified audits, we do allow more time for site visits. I'll be discussing that in a minute. So for certification, GSTC accredited certification, the auditor has more time to do a more thorough check on what is the level of compliance in reality on site.
Maybe to add to that a little, you can extend the time of 1 day just to make sure that you make the afternoon. You start in the afternoon. You have a number of stakeholder meetings in the evening, if your stakeholders are ready for that. So you have the morning of the second day to conclude, and that's still considered 1 day.
Exactly. All right, some practical tips then is to prepare for each respondent a list of questions. So print out or you can print out the Green Destination standard list with clearly marked which criteria should be discussed with which respondent. And we can provide these templates which have space for remarks and for making notes on, maybe you can use the initials of the persons you want to, and you place them before the criteria, so you can quickly scan through your document that you have in paper in front of you and make sure all these criteria that are relevant for the person you're having in front of you are addressed. Yeah, like we discussed before, in your first audits, you may want to record your interviews. Make sure you ask for permission before you start your recording. That's good practice. Ioannis is asking if there's a standard criteria list for the auditor, a special version. Yes, we have two types of standard lists, one with guidance and one without guidance. And of course, the one without guidance is a much thinner document and easier to quickly browse through while you're doing your interview. Alternatively, you can take notes in the printed list of criteria. Like you just have a if you can write quickly and keywords, you can quite securely record what your respondent has been providing for each criterion that you're asking questions about. And during your audit, keep your eyes open and talk to everyone casually about sustainability. So if you're in a shop or in a taxi or in a hotel, yeah, it's always nice and good to hear from them what's keeping them busy, interested, what they're interested in. I remember I talked to a shop owner in Bonaire, the island of Bonaire in the Caribbean, who said that just a souvenir shop with clothing and souvenirs, when a cruise ship arrived, a certain cruise ship from a certain area of the region, that she would close her shop because they were just going to rob their facility, rob her shop. That was quite an eye-opening, actually, that I didn't hear by anybody that I interviewed in that period, that there is a negative impact from people that are actually a negative economic impact, so to speak, from cruise tourists that are having like the cruise more as a very cheap way or to spend their holidays, and they not really the best clients you could have. So of course it's just an story of somebody, but it's giving you a lead to double check and to find out if that's a problem. If it's confirmed by multiple people, you can confront it also with the destination coordinator and say, hey, maybe there's something to work on. You can include it in your recommendation. Okay, final part is the on-site audit. Opening meeting is the start of your on-site audit. I'm going to try to finish this quickly so we have sufficient time for the next part of Albert. Start with the meeting with the key internal stakeholders, such as sustainability coordinator, tourism department, environment department, sustainability unit, etc. There's here a meeting agenda, which I'm not going to reproduce here in front of you, but it's also included in your auditor instruction document. But make sure you have you give an introduction on the scope, on the type of recognition you're auditing for, on the process that you're doing, and that you give the opportunity also to the destination coordinator to provide any changes of the audit program of that day, and the day program, for example. Then the other part, during your interviews and site inspections, interview relevant staff from the departments dealing with culture, heritage, planning, infrastructure, in order to get pending or additional clarification of assessment topics. So it's again not just interview them for the sake of interviewing, but go there with predefined questions and just make sure you have an effective interview then. Ideally, external stakeholders should have consulted prior to the on-site audit, so on phone or Skype or email. But any valuable external stakeholders interviews may be included in the on-site audit program, so in the site visit. Destination staff may join the conversation, but make sure you and your respondents feel free to talk openly. So this is kind of sensitive in some places, and especially I also got that question. We also got the question before, like maybe people feel easier if they talk alone, or feel more easy if they talk in a group or are with other people. So yeah, make your best judgment on what your knowledge of the cultural specifications are of that region or where you're auditing. Visiting key sites. You make your selection of sites based on your desk assessment and stakeholder interviews. Special attention to locations of new and future developments. So if there's new big hotels being built, it's good to see if that's where that's going to be built and what is affected by that new development. Again, destination staff may join for your on-site visit, but avoid that you're taken on a tour. Make sure that you keep in control on what you are seeing. So, of course, it's nice if a destination, if your liaison, if your coordinator is give an explanation of what you see and giving interpretation. That's fine, but make sure that you keep in control where you're going. Examples, we discussed it: wage management facilities, attractions, monuments, etc. And then the closing meeting will include, try to include an official at the end of the audit to plan a meeting with the coordinator and, for example, a board member or a council member, maybe an alderman, to learn about the council's political commitments, strategy, and ambitions. Explain what you've been doing, identify preliminary main strong points and preliminary deficiencies. As far as you were able to do that without having a solid time to review all your results and interviews, and also explain the next steps, what's going to follow up. Maybe if there's any additional consultation with stakeholders needed, if you feel you're not fully informed yet, then you need to talk to somebody before you can give a final judgment on criteria. Then it's also good to announce that during your final closing meeting. Then after the on-site audit, undertake this additional consultation, complete the audit report within 14 days of the audit date, and provide sufficient detail to enable a certification decision to be taken, and make sure that all remarks are motivated and that the report is submitted to the certification committee. Then the quality of the report will be reviewed, and any case of any clarification needed, the auditor will be contacted again. And the full audit report is sent in the end to the destination for final review. Any misinterpretation of factual details can be corrected in agreement with the auditor before the final audit report will be issued. Then, as final part here, some specifications for certified audits. In comparison to the awards procedure, on-site audits may need more time depending on the destination size to get an appropriate sample of sites and stakeholder input. Also, full compliance needs to be evidence-based, while for awards, full compliance may be based on auditor judgment or national legislation as discussed in the baseline assessment situation. If after audit evaluation, no 100% compliance is achieved, but within reach, conditional certification may be issued. So if the destination applies for certification, this conditional certification may be granted based on commitment to improving over the next 2 years. So after 90 days, improve quick wins based on that. If that's reported on and judged as sufficient, conditional certification is issued, and each 8 months provide a progress report to show improvements. And the conditional status is then lifted once all non-conformities are solved. And I see here another question from Johan. Is this conditional status in the accredited status of GD by the GSTC? Yes. Conditional status is within the accredited certification status, but the destinations are required to mention when they're saying that they're certified that it is conditional certification. Okay. So we're going to the last part. Auditing explained with guidelines and example criteria. Albert, you want to take it from here?
Yes, fine. Excellent. We thought it'd be useful to make the process of making checks and making up your mind whether a particular criterion is compliant or partially compliant or non-compliant at all, to create a systematic approach to checks. In the first place for the online audit, and then of course for the on-site audit as well. Yes, next. I think I can't move the screen. Yeah, okay.
No, you can.
So the standard checks for an online audit are we try to make it as brief as possible. We couldn't make it less than 8 steps, but it is in principle a standard checklist for each of the 100 criteria. Although not every of the 8 steps is relevant to each criterion, but it is an attempt to create a systematic approach to what kind of checks would you have to do to make up your mind regarding conformity. So in the first place, step 1 is check the indicator report, whether there is any relevant indicator, any indicator relevant for this criterion. In most cases, it's not so, but sometimes there is relevant information. Step 2 is, does the destination address the range of aspects specified in the criterion description? The criterion description is more than the 2 lines that we call the name of the criterion. It's usually about between 10 and 15 words indicating what the criterion is for. So you specify what are the key elements in that description that have to be addressed by the destination in their sustainability reporting. Then third point, third check, is information as provided through text or document sufficiently up to date? It's difficult to say that everything must be up to date from yesterday. In many cases, you talk about strategies and policies that are made for a longer period, so often for 3 or 5 years. So you would allow a longer time. So sort of documents that are from longer ago, but you would usually not accept a document, let's say in 2018, that is saying this is the strategy for the period 2010 to 2015. Then it's definitely out of date. Check 4 is for many criteria there is stakeholder involvement required by definition in the criteria, but also in practice. And your check is whether the stakeholder involvement is evident from the reporting. Fifth check, in case public availability is required, which is indeed the case for quite a few criteria that we have. It's not. You can say, look, everything should be on the website of the DMO, but not everything is going to be findable or really practical if it's everything is on a DMO website. So check at least whether information or documents, important documents, are available to those who need to be aware of it. Sometimes that's the public, and then for those documents, they need to be on public websites or even be on visitor websites. Check number 6 is the destination approach adequate and sufficient? And that's really a very important thing that also addresses a few questions posed by trainees today. They say, look, you can actually expect that a destination that is keen to get a certain award level would not tell you the whole story. So you can't always read about every little or big problem in the sustainability reporting. So in the first place, when there is a tourism impact assessment, which is criterion 1.7, when that has been made by the destination, you check whether the issue of the particular criterion that you address is covered there. I must say that not many destinations have successfully completed the tourism impact assessment. That's the assessment that we called baseline assessment so far. So you usually find little there. So the second point for step 6 is, are you aware of sustainability issues? for the destination. And there, of course, it's an advantage if you know the destination already. If you come from the same, if you live in the same region, if you come from there, or if you at least live in the same country. So you perhaps have seen items on the news and easily maybe have access in the language of the destination. Sources that you can access through internet or heard from stakeholders if you know them. Of course, that is easier when you live there or you work there. And you got to think about, on the basis of what you suspect could be items like, is there any reason for concern about important attractions or values addressed in the criterion that could be at stake? That really, there could be issues about that. So think about that and check whether these issues or potential issues are addressed in the destination sustainability reporting. So you don't give a judgment there yet, but at least you have a checklist. You make a checklist of things that are potentially to be addressed and discussed. Check number 7 is it described in the sustainability reporting how important issues are addressed and managed, and especially how important attractions and values are protected and how their protection is enforced, and also how major degradation is identified, mitigated or compensated, and how that is enforced. Now these 2 bullets specify attractions and values because they require special attention, because some of the values that we're talking about and some of the attractions like nature areas, cultural sites are replaceable. So damage and insufficient management of these, let's say, assets is really a serious problem, because restoration and mitigation is often very, very difficult. That's in contrast to some of the other items that are replaceable, that are repairable. So consider this step 7 much wider than only attractions and values, but you may well feel like it's important to prioritize irreplaceable attractions and key values, let's say DNA values of the destination. Then finally, the check under 8 is there evidence of sufficient implementation of the approach? So the approach of check number 7. So are the issues really addressed in the best possible way, in a suitable way, but not only on paper but also in practice? I think, do we take questions at this stage? Let me see. Okay, we'll address questions after this session when talking about municipalities. Angelique, we're talking about municipalities here, about problems. Often they say it's not responsibility, but under the forest directorate. Yes, I will come back to that in one of the examples. Carl Reiner asks, what about this situation problem? The DMO is often not responsible to plan or improve services. Yes, same. I will also address that with a few examples. So no question about this sort of standard checks for online audits. Then we can proceed to the next slide. So the standard evaluation of compliance level has been shown earlier by Hugo. So on the basis of this, suppose you only have the online audit, the desk assessment, to decide to evaluate compliance, and that's, for example, the case if you don't make the online audit together with an on-site audit. So you can give full compliance if there is evidence of an adequate and comprehensive approach and implementation. Comprehensive means, well, adequate means that you address the key issues, or that the key issues are addressed. Comprehensive means that it's not only somebody saying that that they are addressed, but also it's documented in in a policy with objectives and targets, and monitoring the results of that. Also full compliance if there is substantive evidence that values or attractions are not subject to issues requiring a comprehensive approach. That is more or less the case when you say this criterion is not really applicable because the values or attractions that are addressed, that are covered by the criterion, are simply not there in the destination, or they are so well taken care of and the pressure from tourism is so low that a more comprehensive approach than the approach that is presently taken is not required. Of course, that requires monitoring in the future, and it may be subject to, or maybe a reason to give recommendation that that the pressure should still be monitored. Partial compliance can be given if, and then it can't be exhaustive here, but let's give the four most occurring examples. Partial compliance if there are good examples of measures, but a comprehensive approach is missing. Also, when there is a good approach, but implementation is not up to standard, is not complete. So it's well arranged on paper, but in practice, there is things missing. If not all important values attractions within the destination are sufficiently addressed. So there may be a variety of values and attractions, and maybe the destination focuses on maybe the UNESCO sites and gives a lot less attention to protection of non-UNESCO sites. Then you say, look, maybe these are important enough to say the compliance is only partial. Also partial compliance, or if some key evidence is missing. We don't say if evidence is missing. Of course, there must be sufficient evidence, and not every detail can be subject to evidence, but that's why we talk about key evidence in terms of documentation, in addition to the summaries that are given by the destination. Finally, not compliant or not conform if important values or attractions lack adequate protection, if there is an insufficient management, or if there is a development that is that's inadequate. That's in short the standard evaluation scheme. Let's get to some follow-up step, which is the on-site audit, which can give more opportunities for the auditor to get evidence on compliance than only an online audit. The standard checks for the on-site audit is, in the first place, identify the key stakeholders for particular criteria. Of course, you can't, it will be too much to get key stakeholders together for each of the 100 criteria. So you have to be selective, you have to try and get key stakeholders, both internal but also external, that can hopefully give you more, inform you on not just one criterion, but several. If you have a difficulty in finding stakeholders, ask the destination for advice, and but do check whether you have indeed your few independent external stakeholders in the group. Check number 2 is before you contact by phone or email people asking questions on site. This is your list of issues that you can check whether you have the right stakeholders, whether they are aware of serious issues and what solutions they can consider, if they consider the management plans effective and up to date, if they consider the implementation of plans and policies is adequate, if they consider the enforcement of regulations is sufficient, and if they feel that they've been involved sufficiently in the development of strategy of action plans. So this has been discussed earlier by Hugo. It'll be good if you have, if you already know a little bit about what your stakeholders can tell you about this before you go, because if you have the impression that you're not going to learn a lot from these stakeholders, you might be trying to to identify a few more stakeholders that can give you information that you want, that you're looking for. 3 is especially in case information or documents is not online, and not all destinations have everything online. Still, this public information can be required. So check with the stakeholders the effective availability of information or documents locally when you're there. First, when, for example, when public announcement for the travelers is indeed available on site, for example, to inform them about visitor behavior or about values, but also whether stakeholders have effectively access to information or documents that they should have access to. 4, we have just another one. So after talking with the stakeholders, if they told you something really new and important, then ask the coordinator of the destination for a response. And sometimes the stakeholder will want you to protect your source, so not want to be mentioned as the source of particular information. So when that's the case, don't disclose the source. And when there is unclarity whether something is really going on or not, just ask the destination coordinator to visit the area involved. So that shows that talking with stakeholders before the visit is beneficial, because then you can still include a visit to that particular site in your 1 day or in your 2 days program. Okay, yes, next. So we're going to we have some time to clarify the theory into a few example criteria. So let's take one.
Shall we discuss a few questions?
Oh yeah, a few questions, of course. Yeah, I'm forgetting about the questions. Are there questions? It's all so small and I can hardly read them.
This one from Lismar is asking, is there any recommended time for a document to be considered up to date, or is it dependent on the nature of the document?
No, not in general, but you would look at the planning period of the document, like is it a policy made for 5 years, let's say a policy or strategy, then you should not be beyond that time. But usually we say that documents should be not older than 3 years, unless there is a 4 or 5 years term for the revision of strategic documents.
And Carl asks if the language of the report, the audit report, must be obligatory in English or in the country language or in both.
Well, the GST credit certification is on the English language standard. And the auditor report needs to be there in English, also to make sure that if we get a GSTC check, then that will be in English, then it can be shown. But there can be a translation of the auditor report in the language of the destination if the destination asks that and requires that, but that will also take extra resources.
Yeah, and our current system doesn't facilitate that, to make the automatic PDFs in 2 languages. So that would make it a bit more complicated.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the questions.
Yeah, that was it.
Okay, good. Next sheet.
Oh. I see there's one question from Lismar here about the public information documents availability. Is second language English a point to be checked or improved?
Documents in the country language can be uploaded as evidence, but a summary of the conclusion that's relevant for the criterion should be given in English on the platform. although we also allow for other languages to be used on the platform, especially for the awards level by representatives that have translated the standard in their own language. Sometimes, indeed, the evidence can be provided entirely in the own language. But that assumes also that the auditor is capable of using that language. So it can only be done in agreements with Green Destinations representatives that have both the coaches and the trainers and the auditors that can work in that particular language. Nevertheless, what I just said a minute ago, the result of the GST accredited certification has to be in English. Maybe that's not the appropriate answer to the question, is it?
I think so, yeah.
Think so? Okay, can we proceed to, yes. Okay, we'll proceed with one of the examples. The first one, 1.1 in destination management, that's the Sustainable Destination Coordinator. So the person assigned responsibility and authority for the adequate implementation of reporting of sustainable destination management. There is reporting instructions here at the right side of the sheet that probably are not new to you, but I give you a few seconds to go through. Now, this sheet gives you the tips and tricks that we provide to destinations. So this is a summary of the destination guidance. A coordinator can be somebody coming from the sustainability or environment department with responsibility for tourism, or it can be a staff from the leisure or tourism department trained in sustainability, or at least focusing on sustainability. And this is the easiest one because we ask the name on the platform of one coordinator. So the platform does not facilitate giving the names of two coordinators because only one is rapporteur on the platform. Nevertheless, if a destination has two people closely working together, one from the sustainability department and one from the leisure or tourism department, they can really form a team and be responsible together, but one of them will be indicated as the rapporteur and the other one can be mentioned also in platform as but probably in another box of being part of the coordination. The coordinator better be somebody at management level or executive level and not be junior level, because a coordinator has important function and also should have an important position in the team, in the destination, in order to sometimes force creating bridges or links between sustainability department or environment department and tourism promotion department, which is not always easy. Now on the platform, destinations can register one coordinator and additional staff, so they can even mention more people. And it's I think we go back to the sheet 1 second. Can we go back to the sheet 1 second? It's recommended to summarize or upload the job description. It's not always a job description is available in destinations. Sometimes people are put on a job and say you can't do that. But we recommend destination managers, destination coordinators, to use the procedure of starting up this participation in this program to update their task description, job description, and have to prove by their department heads. And then they can upload the result of that on the platform. And here is, they don't need to upload CVs. So that is for another criterion. Yes, next. So what are the checks? What are the 8 steps check for an online audit mean for sustainability coordinator? Now we can forget about one. Let's just check one because there is nothing on the indicator report. The second one is a very important one always. Does the destination address the range of aspects specified in the criterion description? So what should a sustainability coordinator have responsibility for? He or she should be responsible for both supervision of the implementation of sustainable destination management and for reporting of it. Check number 3 is information documents sufficiently up to date? Formally, we do not require documents, only for much larger destinations, but a task description can be, if it's not available online, can be easily understood during the audit. If you're going to ask questions to the destination manager as an auditor, let's say you will easily see whether the coordinator is responsible for or dealing with the supervision of the implementation of the reporting, and if the coordinator has contact with external parties. Check 4 is about stakeholder involvement. That's formally also not defined in this criterion description, but it's a key task for every destination coordinator to cooperate with key stakeholders. So you will find out later with corresponding with the coordinator, whether the coordinator is in touch with and cooperates with key stakeholders. Now the regular step, the regular check on the public availability. The document, the task description doesn't need to be publicly available, but it should be clear for every stakeholder how to contact the coordinator. That is the bottom line. And check number 6, is the destination approach adequate and sufficient? Basically, you have to conclude that there is somebody responsible for implementation and reporting. It may even be that in practice it's 1 or 2 or 3 people, but at least somebody is responsible, and you can access the responsible person through the person who is online. So there is quick questioning and context possible with the destination through the coordinator. Okay, we can take questions on on-site audit. Yeah, take a question after this sheet. As I said already, you will only meet the coordinator if you go there on on-site audit, and you will then experience in working with the coordinator whether he or she is really responsible or whether somebody else is. Is there a question, Hugo, on this topic?
Not on this topic.
No. Okay. Then we can proceed to the next one. Next one is 1.8, tourism policy. I think the PC is unstable with regard to projecting, screen sharing.
Yeah, it's going back and forth a bit, but
so sorry about that. The destination has an up-to-date, publicly available multi-year tourism policy or strategy addressing environmental and other issues. The reporting instruction is to summarize the policy and send us a policy document or more documents and refer to relevant pages. So suggestions to destinations here, this sheet shows them. A tourism development policy is only sufficient if sustainability aspects are systematically addressed. On the other hand, many destinations submit just a sustainability policy without a tourism paragraph. So you really need to make sure that there is a tourism and leisure paragraph or chapter in any general sustainability policy. You should be able to read in the documents clear objectives, because this strategy is not an action plan itself, but it should provide the basis for an action plan, which is criterion 1.10. If there is no sustainable tourism policy, then the destination coordinator can refer to other policies or plan, and you could then judge whether the combination of these plans is together a sufficient strategic approach to sustainable tourism in the destination. And there's a particular suggestion to go to a manual on this topic referred to on the bottom of this page. So next slide. Checks for an online audit on tourism policy. One we can forget because there is no indicator on it. Two, always important, like what is addressed here. Is the tourism policy multi-year? Usually it's 3 to 5 years. Is it indeed a tourism policy? Is there one? Is it only an inventory? And are relevant issues from the definition of a criterion included here? Is it sufficiently up to date? As I said, it could be from 3 to 4 years, but definitely not beyond the planning scope of the document itself. Stakeholder involvement is key in sustainable tourism policies. You can't work without stakeholders, so there must be attention to, or a paragraph on how to involve key stakeholders and which ones. 5, in case public availability is required, and that's definitely, I think it's not in a definition, but the tourism policy should be available to stakeholders. So are people that need to have it, do they have access to the strategy and to the document itself? Then, of course, your check is the destination approach adequate and sufficient, and are you aware of sustainability issues? But that's the main task of the audit for every criterion. Yes, next slide. Then for the on-site audit, it's basically the same idea as I presented for the previous one. What could be considered key stakeholders for tourism policy? Well, definitely associations of entrepreneurs, hotel associations, individual hoteliers that focus on sustainability, nature conservation stakeholders, environment stakeholders, and culture and tradition stakeholders. But this is not. You could go beyond this list. I think what is on the rest of this sheet is standard and has been addressed before, so we can move to the next criterion, but we can check whether there is questions on the chat, which I believe is not the case. No,
yeah, there's
Eliza.
Question.
Eliza. Oh, can you read that, Hugo? You got better eyes than me, I'm afraid.
Regarding access, do you consider on request acceptable access of a tourism policy? Or must it be displayed, posted somewhere that it can be accessed without requesting?
I think stakeholders must have access to the policy and should be aware that there is one. I think in many destinations, the tourism policy is not online. It's difficult to find it, but at least stakeholders should be aware of it and able to access it, to get it, to download it if they want, to be sent one. Is that correct, Hugo?
Nowadays, most policies are open, and I think it's common practice in these days that open public governance that this is available for online.
Do we require it in the audit that it must be online always?
No, it's publicly available is the phrase.
Yeah. Okay, that's
so publicly available is also that you can request it. Yeah.
And that you are aware of it, so that's mentioned somewhere that it exists.
Yeah.
That should be well known. So in environment and climate, we have 3.9 wastewater treatment. Why I selected this one? Because it's a difficult one, because not always the destination is in charge of that. So it addresses the question like, what if the destination refers to other bodies responsible for the criterion? So the description you see here, it's the treatment is adequately organized and regulations are enforced, aims to minimize impacts to people and the environment. And it also relates to septic tanks. So destinations are instructed to clarify and explain how it's regulated and implemented. And it's one of the criteria that's been subject to our country baseline assessments on how is it in a number of EU countries. Destinations have to explain how until what level wastewater is treated, because that's obviously possible to different levels. That of course relates to, for an auditor, relates to what is technically up to standard in a particular country. They have to describe current issues. They have to think about how if they could disconnect black water from grey water. They could look into they should look into water management plans, or more specific waste management, waste water management. Next. The checks for an online audit. In this case, check 1 has some relevance, because for some destinations the wastewater treatment percentage is known in the platform. For some countries, it has been publicized, it's been published, so we can take that information into the database. Usually, you will not find, for most countries, you will not find more than only the country average, but we'll come to that in a minute. So, does the destination address all the issues, which is basically the range of wastewater, the treatment, and impacts to people and environment, and the issue of septic tanks? The evaluation of whether the destination takes appropriate actions is that they're often not responsible for the wastewater treatment itself. It's an independent body. Often not only at municipal level. For cities, yes, sometimes they are responsible, and there is a city wastewater treatment, but for many areas there is a regional or even national responsibility for wastewater treatment, and then they could say, oh, but we're not about this, so we have to go to that department, and we don't know. We think they have a responsibility, so at least you could try and check the treatment percentage for the particular destination, and then compare that percentage with the country average in the usually available in the indicator report. And if it's lower than the country average, maybe it's not the responsibility of the destination to change that, but at least they are responsible for taking actions, asking for improvement. So they're expected to take actions, to lobby for improvement. That's in all the cases that a destination is not formally legally responsible, but if they are aware that their situation is unfavorable compared to other destinations or to the country average, you can expect them to do something to change and improve the situation, at least through lobbying or contacts to the government. Then also you can check whether problems in the destination result from local tourism development, and local tourism development is often regulated by the destination. So if hotels or other tourism-related buildings are allowed to be built beyond the sewage water treatment network, they are responsible. If hotels then release sewage water into rivers, lakes, and sea, they can't say, oh, it's the responsibility of the government. They might be responsible for that themselves. So that is the major thing about the checks. The 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 is more or less standard like the other ones. So I suggest to move to the next slide.
Yeah, I think we passed the time that we set for this session.
Right, yes, we can also do the rest in the next session, because you probably need some minutes to introduce the next session.
Yes, exactly. We can either move this to the next session, or
let's do that.
Share it with the participants for inputs. So we share this slide of course, with everybody, and everybody can give input for the next session if there's questions about it.
Yes, that's fine. I think the text speaks for itself. So back to you.
All right. The next steps then. So next session, coming Monday, we'll discuss the top 100 criteria in a similar manner as we've been doing with these example criteria. Giving you the opportunity to prepare questions about each criteria by looking into a destinations assessment on the top 100 criteria. So into a destinations reporting, what they've provided and what they've been in terms of uploads and what they've been explaining. So based on that, you can say, hey, when is this compliant? And do I have my judgment right if I think this is, if I say this is partially or fully compliant or not? So in order to do that, we will connect everybody to a destination that is going to be done by tomorrow, the latest, giving you opportunity to prepare your questions and go through it. Before we can give you access to the platform, we need, for those of you that haven't done so already, receive a signed auditor agreement securing confidentiality and IP arrangements. So we will send that agreement right away after this session to you, so you can return it signed. Then we can provide you login if you don't have a platform login already, and we will connect you to an existing destination for review. And we will also send you a list of the top 100 core criteria to be discussed next week. Actually, we'll send you a complete list of the green destination criteria with the top 100 marked. So in the sessions after that, we have a clear overview of what has been done already. We will send the PowerPoint of today as well, and we will send a recording for streaming the session if you missed something or you had to leave earlier. So that's it for the next steps. And then the homework for the next session is, again, to sign and send us your agreement and to prepare the questions for the 30 top 100 core criteria. In a nutshell. That's it for now. I hope this is clear. I don't see any questions in the chat box on these issues. Oh, there's a long question from Peter. Let's discuss that. Is it possible to work with destinations outside your own country in which you might be a preferred partner? For example, when you approach a destination in a foreign country on a fair or get approached by a destination that's asking for your help, is it mandatory to contact the GD partner in that country and let them do the work? Additionally, if you bring in a destination from a foreign country and you are yourself not preferred partner representative in the country, will you get your shares of the membership fees? Howard, can you respond to that when the technicalities around?
Yes, that's fine. We have agreed with a number of experts and organizations and companies that they have exclusive license to operate the program in their country. If another representative or partner would be asked by a destination in that country to be involved, that partner, the expert, first has to contact us, and we can then ask the exclusive partner whether they are ready for an agreement to get some role or bring in fee. We have the system of a sort of a provision for people bringing in a destination into the program, and then try to make an agreement between the expert and the representatives. For countries where we have a non-exclusive agreement, the partner can indeed contact us and deal with the destination in the way the partner prefers, either as a representative or as a preferred partner. Yes.
Great. I think that was it for remarks. Anna is doing one remark regarding the assigned destinations for this training. Are we able to ask for a specific region? We are assigning destinations. It would be too complicated to take into consideration the specific wishes, but please contact me if you feel this destination is very much not to your liking. Okay, I think we can call it a day. We'll be on the time. So sorry for the initial hiccups of the technicalities of sharing the screen, but I think in the end it worked quite well. So take care and talk to you next week.
Okay, thank you very much, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, thanks.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
This conference will now be recorded.